Pee poo, pee smelly poo, for pee poo peas with pee poo day shall be my pee pee ne'er so bad. Today we will be learning about the art of bear baiting. And we will be learning about the art of bear baiting by making a bear baiting garden from scratch. And as the poet Carl once said, in order to make a bear baiting garden from scratch, one must first invent the universe. And here is how one does that. Okay, I am making a unit of lopers using the riders from the Scuttler STL pack. These guys will sit from the safety outside the pit and just sort of poke the bear with their sticks. Note to self, for my next unit of lopers, I need to make those little pink nibbly guys from the Labyrinth. Then here we have Captain Wolfgang's insatiable strays. And this Norbert here will function as our dealer coin for future purposes. So, bear baiting. What is it? Well, it's a pretty cruel thing to do. But basically, you stick a bunch of dogs and a bear in a pit, and then you bet on what's gonna happen. Which, you know, these days, this would be seen as a pretty much universally evil thing to do. But back in the 1600s, this was about as, if not more popular than the theater. And this is when Shakespeare is putting on all those plays, so, you know, like, theater is basically, theater is basically at its peak. But to be fair, there were people back in those good old days that actually were like, hey guys, you realize this whole bear baiting situation is like super messed up, right? But Henry VIII, he was into them, and so was his daughter Lizzie, so bear baiting stuck around for a while. And then, in 1835, the SJWs of their time, the Quakers, had to butt in and ruin everyone else's fun just because they were jealous. And this Joseph Pease fella, he introduced this Cruelty to Animals Act, which passed, and now bear baiting only ever happens every once in a while. But, you know, right now we've got like a pretty good streak going. It's been a good number of years since the last recorded bear baiting incident, so maybe it's not ideal, but better late than never. I'm gonna file this one away in the happy ending folder, I guess. So, why am I making this? Well, I watched the 𝕭𝖚𝖈𝖐 workshop video about Full Tilt, which is basically a little jousting minigame from a white dwarf for Warhammer Fantasy. And I was thinking, what would be the Turnip equivalent of Full Tilt? I figured it would have to be some other kind of old-timey sport, but whereas jousting is very noble and proud and honorable, the denizens of Sist are very much so not that. They are miserable and cowardly. So I was trying to come up with what sport best reflects that. And bear baiting is, you know, you chain up a bear, and then you don't even fight the bear yourself. You just have your dogs fight it for you. So what's more cowardly than that? So I put together a little mini game myself. I am calling it Buck the Turnip. The game is basically Pharaoh, which is an old-timey cowboy gambling game, which is mostly just roulette but with playing cards. But I added a couple extra rules, like you use the jokers in this version of the game, and when you draw the second joker, the bear shoots someone. The game is in the description if you want to check it out. Fair warning, it is entirely unplay tested, so it might not be great, but here's the beauty. I figured out how to make the design of the game entirely bulletproof, because it is by its very nature a very mean-spirited game. So if the mechanics lead to unfunness, that merely is just reinforcing the main theme, that this whole thing, it shouldn't be a fun thing to do. The pit. How did I make it? Well, I mapped out the core structure in Blender, added some lumpiness, and then 3D printed that out. These toothpicks are going to become spikes that are going to coax the animals into staying in the pit, and this strip of lace doily type of material will add some pretty texture. I mixed up a new batch of mud slop that's going to get spread all over, and the cheesecloth has a cool texture too, so we got to add some of that here. The basic design philosophy I'm following here is just to keep adding layers of texture until the bottommost layers are mostly obstructed. So let's talk about bear baiting connections to Shahak Spa. There is a famous brown bear baited in London's bear garden known as Sackerson. He is referenced in The Merry Wives of Windsor. There is a character by the name of Slender. He is an ineffectual gentleman type, and he's trying to impress a lady, and he's trying to convince her that he's tough. So he brags about how he once held the chain of Sackerson, which, personally, I would think that that's pretty cool, but Anne was not impressed. Instead, she falls in love with some broke schmuck named Fenton, who only loves her for her money. And then Slender tries to kidnap her, but then he accidentally grabs a young boy instead and then almost marries the boy. So you know what? Actually, maybe Anne might have made the right call by not marrying him. Let's get into some Shahak Spa conspiracies. The most famous of one of which is definitely anti-Stratfordianism, which is basically the proposition that Shakespeare was way too poor to actually write good. So all his plays must have been written by some fancy aristocrat type like Francis Bacon or the Earl of Oxford. I would like to propose my own theory, which is called reverse anti-Stratfordianism, and it presupposes that Shakespeare was actually too rich to make real art. And the real guy who wrote all those plays was actually some illiterate mud farmer, and then he just had all those big words beamed directly into his head from God. And here's how I can prove that it is real. Because if anti-Stratfordianism is considered like an anti-intellectual falsehood that is not accepted by scholars or academics, then reverse anti-Stratfordianism must be a hyper-intellectual truthhood that is generally accepted by them. Okay, so here's another one for you. This tabloid claims that clay pipes with a chemical signature similar to that of cannabis were found in Shakespeare's garden. So I'm going to interpret that as meaning that Shakespeare was puffing on that devil's lettuce all day, every day. And that's probably where he got the inspiration for any of the good ideas that he ever used for any of his plays. Okay, so here is my counterfactual alternate history. Instead of reefer, he's token on that salvia divinorum, or maybe he's eating ergot or something. And then maybe he writes some actually more interesting stuff, with aliens and space battles and Death Stars and Babu Frick, instead of all that boring old people crap. Okay, and here's the last one. Was Shakespeare a Catholic or a Protestant? This is a hotly contested debate to this day. And I tried reading the whole Wikipedia article, and I cannot lie, I just could not bring myself to care. So I'm going to let the Trench Crusade guys handle this one, because arguing about denominations is their favorite thing in the world. So, William, what was his take on root vegetables? Well, let's go back to the Merry Wives of Windsor. Sir John of Falstaff, he is kind of like our Frasier character, in that he got his own whole spin-off show. Except, instead of being from Cheers, he's from Henry IV. Anyway, he has a line where he says, "Let the sky rain potatoes." Which, as far as I could tell, potatoes used to be an aphrodisiac because back in olden times they were rare and exotic. So this is Falstaff making like a saucy innuendo joke. Or maybe it means something else. That's the beauty of Shakespeare. Since it's all just a bunch of gobbledygook and a bunch of random words just slammed together, you can just get away with saying it means whatever you want it to mean. We are almost done. I am tactically applying my oil washes this time. Purple red for the fleshy bits, burnt sienna on the wood. Then blend in some subtle random splotches of lime green. A variety of pigment powders will serve to reflect a variety of loam and silt and clay. High gloss varnish will make our mud pit properly wet and sticky and squelchy. This swamp green wash will make our wood look gross and mossy. And we're going to have an obscene amount of blood pooling up in this pit. And I am severely far behind on the arbitrary deadline that I have set for myself. So I have some extra details, but I will have to add those in the future.
It's a world where the dog eats the dog, and they kill for the bones in the street. And God in his heaven, he don't interfere, 'cause he's dead as the stiffs at my feet. I raise my eyes.
Overall, I think it is pretty cool. I am quite happy with it. And if the whole animal blood sport angle doesn't go over well, I can always change the title and pivot and say that this was actually just a Carnival of Chaos Mordheim terrain piece the whole time. Alternatively, remember when G-Dubs did that marketing stunt where they got that letter from PETA that went viral where they asked GW to remove the fur cape from Lehman Russ? Maybe we can get something like that going on. But I digress. So I went with the panda bear because I figured that it's the most innocent of all the bears, so you would feel the most bad for baiting it. My favorite dog here, without a doubt, has got to be the turnip color scheme wolfhound. I was originally going to use the Norbert to practice my 𝕚𝖚𝖗𝖚𝖚 skills, but I panicked and then chickened out. And these lopers are going to be a great head start for whenever I get to making my maudlin marsh army. Alright, that's it. Check out the game, buck the turnip, or don't. You know, it's one of those spec up the line situations where you can only win the game by not playing it. A savage clamor. Well, may I get aboard? This is the chase. I am gone. Forever.